Late one evening, I found myself in an unexpected moment of solitude, completely unaware of the laughter and curious eyes fixed on me. The source of their amusement wasn't my awkward situation, but rather a shocking personal revelation, one I was the last to discover. They found it especially hilarious that I had been utterly clueless about what was happening right under my nose. How could a man be so blind to his wife's infidelity? Ethan Holloway, who claimed to know my wife quite well, was telling his friend Liam Preston how he had seduced her at a party last week. Meanwhile, I was called to investigate a break-in at a local art gallery. I was gone for about 2 hours and returned before the night was over. Upon my return, I found my wife sitting at a table with 3 other people, including Ethan Holloway and his boss, along with their spouses. My name is Lucas Hayes, and I'm an insurance investigator for a well-known company that deals with high-value property clients. This profession might be unfamiliar to most, but I've been in it since I graduated from college, over 15 years ago. At 37, I consider myself in the prime of my life. My job involves investigating incidents that might lead to substantial compensation claims, mainly thefts and robberies, and sometimes car accidents involving multiple vehicles. I'm very good at what I do, and I've built a solid reputation in my industry. I'm often contracted out to other companies for a premium. Although I travel frequently, it's never for long periods. If a lengthy investigation is required, I have a team that can stay on site to finish the job. I've been married to Lila for 14 years, and we have 2 wonderful children, Elena, age 10, and Sophie, age 8. Lila, who's a year older than me, also works at the same company as the personal secretary to Henry Carter, the company president. We got married before she joined the company, but I encouraged her to apply for a position after she lost her previous job. Although hiring her needed HR approval due to nepotism policies, they agreed because of my standing within the company. Fortunately, Henry Carter was looking for a new secretary, and Lila's extensive experience as a personal assistant at a major corporation made her a perfect fit. After the interview, he offered her the job on the spot. Ethan Holloway and Liam Preston, the people I mentioned earlier, are insurance specialists who deal with large companies or wealthy individuals. While we're not close friends, they work under David Langston, a mutual acquaintance and a good friend of mine. I report primarily to Henry Carter and work independently, though sometimes David gives me interesting assignments. A week after the party, I overheard a disturbing conversation. I had stepped into the restroom to take a break when Ethan and Liam walked in, seemingly ignoring the closed stall door, and started talking about the party. Ethan began bragging to Liam about his recent conquest, making me feel a growing discomfort in my gut, something far worse than food poisoning. Liam asked Ethan how he managed to seduce her, surprised because he never saw her as that type of woman. Ethan said they danced a bit, and she seemed friendly. When he suggested going to his office, she mentioned that Lucas wouldn't like it, but he convinced her to join him for a drink at the bar. Ethan continued, describing how, while Lucas was dancing with Lila, he got a double shot from the bartender and subtly swapped their drinks. His aim was to help Lila relax so he could make advances on the dance floor. Liam questioned Ethan's plan, given Lucas' presence, but Ethan claimed he hadn't planned Lucas' departure. It was just luck. During the dance, Lucas told Lila he needed to step out briefly. Though Lila suggested he take her home first, Lucas insisted she stay and have fun, promising a quick return. Lila wasn't thrilled, but agreed, staying behind with Ethan, David, and his wife. Later, Ethan got Lila another drink, secretly asking Max to make it a double again without her noticing. As they danced, Lila became more intoxicated, clinging to Ethan as he made his moves. She giggled and pressed against him several times. Ethan thought a few more drinks would seal the deal, so he got her another, which she quickly drank. Unbeknownst to her, it was another double, and she started feeling very woozy. Ethan suggested they get some fresh air, and Lila agreed. They ended up in the back seat of his car. She was almost unconscious, and he slid his hand under her skirt. She didn't resist and even begged for more. He complied, and she seemed to enjoy it. Ethan found the experience unbelievable. Ethan couldn't believe Lila would behave this way, considering she never seemed like someone who would cheat or be attracted to him. He assured his friend that it all happened, mentioning a date with Lila the following Saturday when she usually went to the salon. They planned to meet and book a hotel room for the day. Liam, envious, acknowledged Lila's attractiveness, and wondered what Lucas did to deserve her. He even hinted at meeting Lila after Ethan was done with her. Ethan gave a non-committal maybe and stressed the need for secrecy to avoid any issues. They left the restroom, leaving me grappling with what I had just heard. Could this really be happening? I started recalling that night. It was almost 11 p.m. when I returned to the party, finding Lila seated with Ethan, Julie, and David Langston. Lila didn't seem drunk when I joined them. She was chatting with Julie about the kids. Ethan exchanged a few words with me but left shortly after. I noticed Lila whispering something to him, but I didn't think much of it. The only odd thing about that night was when we got home. Lila wanted to make love. While not entirely out of the ordinary, it struck me as odd given the circumstances. She typically wasn't in the mood this late at night, but she was particularly passionate that evening, almost like she was driven by guilt or regret. About a week passed after the party, and I noticed no change in Lila's demeanor. She never mentioned my early departure from the party or what happened in my absence. When I asked, she claimed she danced with Ethan and David, but mostly observed. She said she and Julie talked about school and the kids' activities, and that was it. She even suggested she would have preferred to come home when I left, implying I needed to keep a closer eye on her. "Do you have any plans for this Saturday? I was thinking of playing golf, if that's all right," I asked, watching her closely for her reaction. "This Saturday? Right after lunch, I'll be at the salon. It'll take me an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Where are you heading?" she replied, seemingly casual. "To the golf course," I answered, feeling a knot in my stomach. How did Ethan know about her plans if she hadn't told him? I hadn't known about it either. It all felt uncomfortably real. "I'm thinking the country club. Maybe I'll see if Liam Preston wants to join. He and David are usually up for a game," I continued, probing for more clues. "Don't you think Liam and David are idiots?" she replied, her tone dismissive. "I'm not sure. I know David is, but I don't know Liam or his wife well enough to say," I answered, trying to keep the conversation neutral. "What about Ethan Holloway? You talked to him at the party, right? Maybe he'd like to come along," I suggested, watching her reaction closely. Lila turned and gave me an odd look, pausing before responding. "Why would you want him to come? Has, pardon my language, an idiot. I had to dance with him a few times at the party, and he really creeped me out. He's still an idiot." Now I was wondering if she was trying to dissuade me from inviting him, or convincing me she disliked him. Either way, it was unusual for her to speak about someone like that. "Oh, I don't know much about him, but is Liam's friend, and they seem close. Maybe it's not a good idea. I'll just call Sam and Owen. They're always up for a round," I replied, backing off the topic. "That sounds like a better plan. Stay clear of Ethan. You don't want any trouble," she said, seemingly relieved. "All right, he's off my list now. So, you're okay with golf?" I asked. "I'm fine with it as long as I'll still be at the salon. How about dinner at the Cypress Inn afterward? I'll have a fresh haircut, and you can unwind after golf. You can take me out and show me off. I'll drop Sophie and Elena off at my parents'," she suggested. I agreed, and we arranged to meet at home at 5:30 on Saturday to prepare. If I had been more cautious, I could have gathered enough evidence to confront her that day. It would have been fitting to lay it all out over dinner at one of the city's finest spots. The next day at work, I headed to the control room to gather some gear for tracking my wife and her lover. I decided to take one of the company's surveillance vans, leaving it in the lot until Saturday morning when I went golfing. I grabbed 2 small transmitters for her purse and car, and a GPS unit for her vehicle. It would pinpoint her exact location at any time. The van was equipped with video capabilities, but I wasn't sure how to utilize it since Ethan mentioned a motel. Filming was out of the question. Perhaps I could conceal a camera in her jacket, but only if I knew she'd wear it. I could try, but it was uncertain. With the GPS unit, I could track her movements, tapping into its signal with the van's equipment. It had local street maps pinpointing her location within 30 meters. The audio transmitters would capture any conversations recorded within the van. All of this could be automated, so I didn't even need to be present in the van. I just needed to leave it about a mile away from where she was last week. My plan was to spend the rest of the week observing. I'm quite skilled at this since it's my profession. I observed Liam and Ethan but didn't notice anything unusual. Normally, I visit my wife at least once a day, but lately, I've been visiting a bit more frequently. Although I hadn't seen anything suspicious yet, I decided to gather information from Liam. He explained that he was working on policies for a large factory complex, and I used to spend some time examining the site and developing contingency plans for potential disasters. This is known as risk analysis and is part of the risk insurance process. On a particular Tuesday, I approached his desk, which was across from Ethan's. He seemed deeply engrossed in his work. I greeted him and expressed my desire to review the Baxter plant plan for the day. Initially, he appeared distracted until he understood my request, after which he simply nodded and agreed, stating he was available anytime. I still needed to return to that location to take some photos. We discussed the timing, agreeing to go in about an hour. It was decided that my colleague would stop by my desk on their way. After a brief exchange, I turned the corner and noticed a smirk exchanged between Liam and Ethan. They maintained their gaze on me until I was out of sight. They were intriguing individuals. I resolved that Liam would face consequences for his actions. Although he wasn't directly involved, he colluded with Ethan and made disparaging remarks about my wife. He was aware of the plan and chose to witness Ethan's deception, rendering him equally responsible in my perspective. An hour later, Liam arrived as arranged, and we departed in my SUV. I discreetly installed one of the small transmitters in the car console, which could record any conversation within or near the vehicle. My intention was to have a record of our private conversation. As we left the parking lot and began the 25-minute journey to Baxter, I started the conversation. "So, Liam, did you enjoy the party last week?" I asked, trying to ease into the topic. "I wasn't there. I was away on a trip and missed out on the festivities," he responded. I conveyed to Liam my interest in understanding what had caught his attention, particularly in light of Ethan's betrayal involving my wife. I asked if that was what he had overlooked. Liam seemed taken aback by my straightforwardness and initially struggled to respond. He made a move towards the door handle but then composed himself and met my gaze. "I only know what Ethan told me. I'm not sure if it's all true," he confessed, doubting the accuracy of the information. "Do you really think Ethan would make up such a story?" I pressed, skeptical. Liam pondered this and then shrugged. "It's hard to say, but why would he lie about something like that? I overheard him talking about getting her drunk and taking her to his car. How did you know about it if you weren't there?" I questioned further, pushing for more details. Liam looked uncomfortable but finally said, "Ethan told me about it afterward. He mentioned your 2-hour absence coinciding with the incidents." I nodded, noting the information. This was just the beginning. I needed to dig deeper and find out the truth. Ethan didn't seem to have any further plans beyond what he had already disclosed. Liam, hesitant and unsure of the truthfulness of Ethan's story, recounted his words. I sarcastically commented on Liam's loyalty and thanked him for his so-called friendship, hinting that he should have told me regardless of his intentions. Liam expressed reluctance, saying he wouldn't wish such a situation on anyone, and apologized for making me feel like a fool. He mentioned Ethan's claim that he couldn't resist my wife. After Ethan's statement, I switched off the recorder, intending to keep our next conversation off the record. I reassured Liam that if he followed my instructions, he'd be fine, but warned him of serious consequences if he failed. Liam nodded in agreement, clearly uneasy. I then hinted at another matter to discuss with him. I made it clear that Ethan must remain unaware of our conversation and that Liam must not disclose anything to him. I stressed the severe consequences of any breach of trust, including losing his job and tarnishing his reputation. I reminded him that I had ways of monitoring both him and Ethan to catch any slip-ups. I assured Liam that I wouldn't confront Ethan or interact with him, instructing Liam to continue as usual and let Ethan do the talking without interference. With the truth in hand, I instructed Liam to heed my warnings, assuring him everything would be fine if he followed my instructions. After that, we barely spoke, spending the next 2 hours in silence. Liam did his job, and I did mine, getting the information I needed while keeping Liam in the dark about my plans. It wasn't necessary for him to know everything just yet. The week dragged on, with me keeping a close watch on Lila. Although she didn't show any suspicious behavior, I remained vigilant. Wednesday evening came, and the kids went to their dance class, which ended around 9:30. I sat in the living room watching TV when Lila joined me, settling onto my lap. She wrapped her arms around my neck, pressing her cheek against mine. "We've got about 2 hours before I need to pick up the kids. How about we make love?" she suggested, her voice a mix of seduction and urgency. Despite my anger and frustration over the situation, I was still human. Against my better judgment, I felt myself getting aroused. I held her tightly, kissing her passionately. "Take me upstairs to our bedroom right now. I want you and I want it now," she whispered urgently. Without another word, I followed her upstairs, admiring her figure. We undressed and then engaged in intense, passionate lovemaking. Afterwards, we lay in each other's arms, basking in the afterglow. For a moment, I pushed aside my doubts and fears that everything would come crashing down. I wanted to believe it was all a lie, but reality had a way of creeping back in. "That was amazing, darling. We need to do this more often, don't you think? We've been out of sync lately. Let's not let that happen again," she said, her voice soft and content. "Agreed. I'll make sure of it. How much time do we have? Do we have time for a quick shower?" I asked, trying to keep the mood light. "I have to pick up the kids after 9, but we can delay it if you want. Now, or should we wait until our date on Saturday night? I could ask the kids to stay at their grandma's for the night," she suggested. "How about this? I'm all yours for the evening. Anything else planned for Saturday?" I inquired. "Okay, you've got golf, and I've got a hair appointment. Then we have our dinner date, and afterward, I'm all yours. Whenever you want, however you want. And I expect plenty of that from you. Any better offers now?" she teased. "None at all," I replied, smiling. "Okay then, we're set," she said, quickly dressing and heading out to fetch the children. I lay there for a while, reflecting on what had just happened. How could she be so affectionate and intimate with me if she was involved with someone like Ethan Holloway? I knew she was clever, but was she also a skilled actress? Something didn't add up, and I was determined to find out the truth. On Saturday, while she was out, I checked the transmitters and confirmed they were working. My plan was to install them in her car on Friday night and in her purse. I had everything ready except for one last meeting with Liam Preston. I needed to know which hotel Ethan had reserved. Liam would get that information for me, or I'd have to resort to more drastic measures. The following morning, I called Liam and arranged to meet him in the third-floor cafeteria. He agreed without hesitation. When he arrived, I was already seated at a table. He joined me silently, and I got straight to the point. "Liam, I need you to find out from Ethan where he's planning to take Lila on Saturday. I need the motel's name and location. Catch him alone and ask him. Tell him you suspect he's deceiving you, and that you'll trust him if he tells you the truth," I instructed, my tone leaving no room for argument. Liam hesitated, the fear of my reprisal evident in his eyes. Eventually he agreed, but asked how I'd verify if he was telling the truth. I assured him not to worry. I had my ways. As he left, I discreetly placed one of the transmitters under his jacket collar. He was so nervous he didn't notice a thing. Back in my office, I activated the receiver and heard Liam return to his desk and start talking to Ethan. Liam invited Ethan to meet him in the copy room in 10 minutes, to which Ethan agreed. Liam then questioned Ethan about potential marital issues. Ethan defensively claimed everything was fine and mentioned seeing me the day before, seemingly doing well. Unsatisfied, Liam pressed him about his plans with my wife for Saturday, specifically mentioning a motel. Ethan, insistent on his truthfulness, offered proof if needed. He revealed that he had booked a room at the Skyview Motel on Statler Street for Saturday night, with check-in at 2 p.m. and my wife arriving by 2:15 p.m. He even suggested calling the motel to confirm. After confirming the details, Ethan made a disparaging remark about my marriage and warned Liam not to meddle in their affair. Despite Liam's apparent concern, he nodded in agreement, clearly shaken. Ethan remained indifferent, suggesting that if my wife was interested, so was he. After hearing this exchange, I turned off the receiver, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. I had hoped Ethan would admit to lying, but instead he confirmed everything, leaving me unsettled. Now, with the motel address in hand, I planned to set up surveillance equipment in the van. My mind raced with ideas. I could park the van there on Friday night, activate the gear on Saturday at noon, and keep my distance to avoid witnessing my wife's betrayal firsthand. The only thing I could do now was gather concrete evidence to confront Lila, Ethan, and Liam. My first move was to call the motel, and they confirmed Ethan's booking. At least that part was true. With that confirmation, I had to bide my time until Friday evening. Then an idea struck me. What if I captured them entering the motel room on camera? I decided to visit the motel that day and scout the area. Inside the Skyview Motel office, I waited for the clerk, a shady-looking character, which suited my purposes perfectly. Honesty wasn't what I needed right now. "Hello, friend. I'm an investigator for an insurance company, and I need some information. Here's my ID and a warrant," I said, flashing my badge and presenting a convincing, albeit fake, document. The slip of cash I handed him didn't hurt either. "Sure, what do you need?" he replied, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the money. "I need to confirm Ethan Holloway's reservation and get a room number," I said. He checked his records and shook his head. "No room assigned yet." "How about you assign a room on the first floor overlooking Statler Street," I suggested, slipping him another $50. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded and gave me a room number that was perfect for my needs. I informed him about the van I'd be parking on his property, to which he shrugged indifferently. I thanked him again and slipped him another $50 for his discretion. His sly grin as he pocketed the cash told me he'd keep quiet. As I left, it dawned on me that I could capture the footage I needed by positioning the camera through the front window of the van parked directly outside their room. My plan was set. Friday at work was challenging. My mind was elsewhere. To distract myself, I headed to Henry Carter's office, using the excuse of discussing a recent art gallery robbery. Although the details weren't urgent, my real motive was to catch a glimpse of Lila as I walked through the hallway. Her face brightened upon seeing me, and she waved me over to her table. "I've been seeing more of you lately. Not complaining, but what's changed? Anything I should know about?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. "Nothing much. Just enjoying being around you more," I replied. "Is Henry in?" "He is. Want me to introduce you?" she offered. "Yes, if possible. I need to discuss some matters regarding the art gallery," I explained. Entering Henry's office, I engaged in conversation. Despite his youth, Henry had earned a strong reputation. He had spearheaded various ventures, including the site I worked on, and held a substantial stake in the company. His wife, Aria, whom I'd met on several occasions, epitomized the trophy wife, blonde, slender, and stunningly attractive. She and Lila were of similar ages and often chatted while Henry and I had developed a close rapport. During our discussion, I directly asked Henry about Ethan Holloway. As part of my duties, I regularly provided feedback on other employees' performance, though this inquiry was personal. "Why the interest in Ethan? Is there something I should know?" Henry asked, curious. "I need to ensure any potential issues with my team are addressed promptly," I replied. "Well, I do have some concerns about Ethan. I'm not particularly fond of him or Liam. I might have more to share this weekend if things go as anticipated. How about we touch base at my place on Sunday? If not, we'll reconvene on Monday," Henry suggested. "Let's wait and see. Please keep this between us," I requested. "Agreed. I trust your judgment. You've always been fair in your evaluations. By the way, I'd like you to reconsider the vice president position I proposed. I haven't discussed it with Lila yet, but she deserves to know. If you don't inform her soon, I will," Henry stated firmly. "I'm waiting for the right moment. This entails significant changes for us, so I needed time to deliberate. I'll give you an update next week," I replied. "Sounds good. Think it over. Weigh your options. We'll talk soon," Henry said as we concluded our conversation. Leaving Henry's office, I exchanged a few words with Lila before heading toward Liam. Pausing at his desk, I made a loud comment about Baxter's performance, ensuring Ethan overheard. I then subtly signaled to Liam that I knew about his conversation with Ethan, which surprised him. Though neither of us spoke further, I patted him on the back and discreetly removed the small transmitter, leaving him unaware. Wrapping up the day without interruptions, I waited for Lila before heading home. I planned to tell her I needed to drop off the van and would be a bit delayed. She kissed me goodbye and left. I noticed Ethan standing by the door, watching her leave. He glanced at me briefly before returning to his seat. Afterward, I parked the van and ensured the camera was correctly positioned to capture the room the clerk had assigned. I secured it and reminded the motel owner to let it stay there overnight, perhaps until the next day. Slipping him an extra $20, I thanked him for his cooperation. He pocketed the money and shook my hand, sealing our deal. Returning home, Friday night brought an unexpected twist. Lila had ordered pizza for the kids and arranged for them to spend the evening at Grandma's. When I asked her why, Lila explained that she had enjoyed our Wednesday night so much that she wanted to continue the trend. Did I mind? Not at all. As Friday night unfolded similarly to Wednesday, a gnawing feeling took hold of me. Despite enjoying the experience, I couldn't shake off the unease. Where had she learned these new techniques? Later, when I asked her about it, she giggled, reached over to her nightstand, and handed me a book. It was an article about lovemaking after 35. The pages contained many of the things we had done the past 2 nights. I found pleasure in our activities that night, striving to fulfill her desires, even though the entire situation felt surreal. We spent most of the night entwined, and I made a mental note to get some Viagra for future encounters. As we lay beside each other, I finally gathered the courage to ask about her newfound enthusiasm. "Lila, I love what we've been doing, and I want to make you happy, but I need to ask, where is all this coming from? Why now? If I didn't trust you so much, I might think there's a guilty conscience at play." "Sorry, Lucas. Arya shared something with me last week that I can't repeat. It got me thinking about our life together, and it made me so happy. Sometimes I just need to express that joy. I wanted to show you how much you mean to me," she said, her eyes shining with sincerity. I listened, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. If this was true, how could she be having an affair? Should I confront her now? "I'm glad you feel that way. Are you sure I make you happy enough? Are you satisfied with our closeness? Or do you feel something is missing? Please be honest," I urged. "I adore our closeness, and you've always made me feel complete. I don't want more. I just don't want our passion to fade into routine. Can't you see? Don't you want me to always feel desired by you?" she asked earnestly. "You'll never have to worry about that. I love you and always will." "I can't imagine anything jeopardizing what we have," I reassured her. "That's good to hear because I won't let anything come between us," she replied, snuggling closer. We spent the rest of the night wrapped in each other's arms, waking up the same way, though pleasantly exhausted. I wanted to shower with Lila, so I woke her and pulled her into the shower with me. Initially protesting, she eventually joined me under the warm spray, and we tenderly attended to each other's needs. Soon, our passion ignited again, and we pleasured each other. Afterward, she mentioned she was ready for the day, but anticipated something more that night. With that, we finished our shower, got dressed early, and I drove to the motel to finalize my preparations. I programmed all the timers to activate at 1 p.m. and ensured the audio recording would last at least 5 hours. The video footage would be burned onto a DVD, a process that would take around 7 hours after compression, covering the entire day. I initiated the sequences and locked up the van. When these two entered their little sanctuary, they'd become the stars of my new film, and the initial screening would be unforgettable. Returning home to grab my golf clubs and bid Lila farewell, the day turned out to be a disaster. I played golf with 2 acquaintances from the club, and my performance was abysmal. By the end, I felt like a complete failure, buying beers for everyone. Around 5, I drove to the van to ensure everything was in order. Scanning the area, I saw no cars or activity, assuming everyone had left. Quickly calling home, Lila answered, and I told her I was on my way. As the time to meet Lila drew near, I drove home without reviewing the surveillance data. I wanted to confront her with the evidence before dinner, but decided to savor our evening together one last time. Despite the betrayal, I still enjoyed making love to her. However, the thought of losing her made me choke up. Why was she doing this to me? I loved her deeply, and the thought of life without her seemed unbearable. If the evidence confirmed my suspicions, divorce was inevitable. Her behavior was unacceptable. But what about our children? She was a devoted mother and deserved custody. If she had indeed cheated, there must be a reason I didn't know. She was fundamentally good, but had made a grave mistake. I could come to terms with that. She could care for the children, and I would provide child support. These thoughts consumed me as I drove home to reunite with Lila, uncertain if I could endure the evening. Legal action couldn't proceed until I had concrete evidence, yet doubt lingered in the back of my mind. I brushed it aside. Facts were facts, and soon I'd have all the evidence I needed. At home, Lila had already showered and dressed, mentioning she'd add the finishing touches when it was time to leave. Meanwhile, I hurried to get ready, ensuring we left on time for our reservation. My wife was radiant, always drawing attention as we entered the room. She brushed off the admiring glances from men effortlessly, but I couldn't help noticing, always filled with pride. Tonight was a stark reminder of what could have transpired. Despite everything, she remained intelligent and engaging, making her an excellent dinner companion. We conversed on various topics typical of a night out, and she indulged in more wine than usual. As the designated driver, I noticed her being particularly flirtatious with me. As we concluded our dessert of chocolate mousse and sorbet, we exchanged smiles, both eager to retire to the bedroom upon returning home. I signaled the waiter for the bill as Lila excused herself to the restroom. Exiting hand in hand, we made our way to the car. As I navigated the main street toward our house, Lila leaned against my shoulder, intertwining our fingers. She gently moved my hand from the steering wheel to my lap, and without much prompting, I hugged her tightly, reminiscent of our youthful love. She sighed contentedly, and we drove home in a tender embrace. Once home, Lila busied herself with household tasks, her energy seemingly endless. Finally, she turned to me, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Shouldn't we head upstairs and pick up where we left off this morning? You owe me, remember?" "Absolutely. Lead the way," I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm despite the turmoil inside me. We ascended the stairs quickly, anticipation building. Lila stood before the bed, her eyes locked on mine as I stripped down to my boxers and socks. She removed her top and bra, leaving only a strand of pearls around her neck. As she reached to remove them, I stopped her. "Leave them on. You look incredible with just those pearls. This is a sight only I get to see. I'm completely yours tonight," I said, trying to immerse myself in the moment. "I'm all yours," she whispered, her voice filled with a mix of seduction and sincerity. In that moment, I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, I decided to put aside my doubts and focus on the present. We explored new realms of intimacy, trying positions and experiences that were new to us. She laughed and referenced page numbers from her book whenever I inquired about her fantasies. It was a night of discovery and connection, one that felt almost surreal in its intensity. We fell asleep entwined, waking late on Sunday morning, reluctant to part. She agreed to one more encore of our favorite moments from the night before. Afterwards, she had to pick up the girls, and I mentioned needing to check on the van. She suggested staying at her mom's for a while, giving me the perfect opportunity to retrieve the tapes from the van and review their contents. Once she left, I drove to the van, retrieved all the recordings, and returned the van to the production facility. I called a taxi to pick me up and take me back to my car, then headed home. The first thing I did was examine the GPS printout. It confirmed her car's location at the motel on Statler Street. My heart sank. The confirmation of my worst fears hit me hard. I felt compelled to view the video firsthand. I switched on the TV and DVD player, inserting the DVD and preparing myself for the inevitable heartbreak. The image was crystal clear, the room perfectly centered on the screen. I fast-forwarded until I saw a car approaching, then slowed to normal speed. Ethan Holloway emerged from the car, opened the room's door, and disappeared inside. Rewinding, another car appeared, and I saw a woman knocking on the door and being greeted by Ethan's smile as she entered the room. When she turned, revealing her face, my heart raced and my pulse skyrocketed. Pausing the video, I watched it from start to finish before removing it. "Well, it'll be damned," I muttered. I needed to contact Henry Carter immediately. There was one address I had to verify, so I retrieved my wife's address book from my desk drawer. As expected, the address I sought was there, confirming my suspicions. A determined smile crept onto my face. With all the necessary information in hand, I dialed Henry's home number, urging him to meet me immediately. He initially insisted I come to his house, but I persuaded him to meet me alone elsewhere. Eventually, we agreed to rendezvous at the TGIF restaurant near the office. An hour later, we met there. Lila and the girls had plans for dinner at her mom's, giving me the time I needed. At TGIF, I briefed Henry before revealing the DVD. I brought along a portable player with a 9-inch screen and headphones for privacy. As he watched, his anger simmered beneath the surface. Initially skeptical, he vehemently denied the possibility of Lila's involvement. However, as I played the recording of Liam's encounter with Ethan and laid out the entire narrative implicating both Liam and Ethan, Henry's complexion turned crimson with rage. Despite his personal regard for Lila, he gradually accepted the truth. I advised him to watch the DVD before passing further judgment. As Henry viewed the footage, his expression shifted from disbelief to pain. Sensing his need for privacy, I looked away, allowing him to process what he had seen. When he finished, he met my gaze, waiting for my response. Once composed, I made my sole request. I want them both terminated for breaching the moral clause in their contracts, effective by Monday afternoon. With the evidence I've provided, you have the authority to act as you see fit. I won't mention this again, I stated firmly. Henry's surprise gave way to a resolute nod. You have my word. This will be handled first thing Monday, and I'll personally escort them off the premises. They're dead to me. There may be further action I'll take, but it's best you don't know the details. Understood? Agreed, I replied. Following that, I handed him a bag containing all the surveillance data except for one small cassette, which I kept for my own purposes. It was necessary for my plans regarding my wife. Henry and I continued our discussion for another hour or so, making additional decisions to address later in the week. We parted ways with a handshake, and before I left, Henry addressed me once more. Lucas, you've handled this with a level of integrity and composure that's admirable. I appreciate your efforts and respect your actions. Things could have escalated if you hadn't been so level-headed. You have my gratitude and respect, he said. I felt a sense of relief as I headed home to my family, who remained unaware of the impending changes. That evening at home went smoothly, and my spirits were high. Lila was curious about what had transpired, but I told her she'd learn more at work the next day. Exhausted from the previous nights, we retired early for a peaceful night's sleep. Lila wanted to be embraced, and I gladly obliged. We fell asleep in each other's arms, just like the previous night. Monday morning arrived, bustling with activity at work. At 9:30, Lila called me, her voice tinged with urgency. You won't believe what's happening. Henry has summoned Liam Preston and Ethan Holloway to his office. They're in there now and tensions are high. Feigning cluelessness, I asked, what's going on? Henry is furious. He's called security, she whispered, before hanging up, promising to update me later. 20 minutes passed, and Lila called again. Henry had security escort Liam and Ethan out of the building. They're fired. He wants me to draft their termination letters citing a breach of the morals clause, she said, her voice a mix of exhilaration and disbelief. This is the most unusual event I've ever witnessed as Henry's secretary. We need to talk over lunch. We met for lunch, and Lila recounted the morning's events in detail. She described how security had marched Liam and Ethan out, warning them never to return. She mentioned Henry's agitation, even recounting a moment when he snapped at her before quickly apologizing. Eventually, she turned to me, seeking insight. How would I know about this? I said, feigning ignorance. Henry told me to ask you. When I pressed him, he just said, ask Lucas, he knows everything, and opened my eyes to a lot. So spill it. Before I say anything, listen to this tape. I handed her a cassette of Liam and Ethan's conversation about the motel. She listened, her expression turning pale as she reached the end. Removing her headphones, she exclaimed indignantly, this is absurd. It's a lie. I never went to any motel with him and never would. You can't trust this recording. Did you show this to Henry? Does he believe this nonsense too? No, he doesn't believe Ethan, and neither do I said, calming her slightly. But I have something to explain, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Lila nodded, still visibly shaken. I overheard Liam and Ethan talking about a week ago. Ethan boasted to Liam about an encounter with you at a party, claiming he got you intoxicated and took you to his car. He provided explicit details, and Liam seemed convinced. In fact, Liam was so impressed he wanted in on the next rendezvous. Lila tried to interject, but I pressed on. I needed to know the truth, so I instructed Liam to confront Ethan, who admitted to booking a motel room on Statler Street for Saturday afternoon, during your hair appointment. That raised alarms. How did he know about your appointment unless you told him? I never told him, she protested. I was at the salon, like I said. My salon is on Statler Street, but I had no idea about any motel rendezvous. You don't believe me? I do believe you, Lila, I reassured her. But I had to verify everything. I used a company surveillance van to monitor your car and record anyone entering the motel room. I reviewed the footage on Sunday. A woman did visit Ethan, but it wasn't you. Who was it? She asked, bewildered. It was Aria, Henry's wife, I revealed. I suspected something was off after talking to David Langston. He said you and his wife only drank soft drinks at the party and stayed together the whole night, even asking her to stay by your side to deter Ethan. I realized Ethan was diverting attention from his true companion. Lila's eyes widened in shock. So, did you really doubt me? Did you set up surveillance to spy on me? I had to be sure, Lila. Ethan's lies created doubt, but I never doubted your integrity. I needed to uncover the truth, and unfortunately, it implicated Henry's wife. He was devastated when I told him. We talked further, reluctantly returning to work. Lila accepted my explanation, though she was hurt by the surveillance. I felt no regret for uncovering the truth. Our relationship was now stable, and I was determined to keep it that way. The rest of the day was a blur of normalcy until Lila informed me that Henry wanted to speak with her that evening. She seemed to believe my feigned ignorance. During dinner, amidst the usual chaos with the girls, Lila found a moment to share her conversation with Henry. He talked about the importance of trust, respect, and love in a marriage, and the devastation of losing it all. Then he confided in me about Aria's actions and asked for my advice. What did you tell him? I asked, intrigued. I encouraged him to reflect on his love for Aria and consider forgiveness if possible. I urged him to have a candid conversation with her, but cautioned against prolonging the decision if reconciliation seemed unlikely. He seemed receptive. Did he mention anything about me? I inquired. No, nothing specific. Why? She asked, sensing more. Well, yes. Henry extended an offer for me to become Vice President of Investigations. It involves overseeing all investigators globally and offers substantial financial rewards and benefits, including shares. We could choose to live in California or Florida, though I'd still report to Henry. Lila's excitement was palpable. She leaped into my arms, overwhelmed with joy. When did this happen? Is this in recognition of your actions today? Actually, he proposed this 6 months ago. I wasn't ready to consider it until now. The thought of losing everything made the decision more tangible. Last week, I feared I might lose you, and it prompted me to reevaluate. Lucas, you could never lose me like that. I won't stray, ever. It's out of the question. Do you understand? She affirmed, holding me tightly. We held each other, the weight of the past week lifting. Our future seemed clearer now, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Exhausted from the emotional roller coaster, we retired early, falling into a deep, peaceful sleep, ready to face whatever came next together.